Welcome to another episode of Should You Take That Case? I'm glad everybody is here showing up on a Monday, on a work day. I hope you find it informative and enjoyable. So, I just want to welcome members and friends and visitors to our regular live show. Should you take that case? Where we have each week an attorney interview and we discuss medical cases and medical case screening. I'm your host, Lisa Wade, legal nurse consultant and owner of Wade Nurse Consultants. And I'm also the creator of our private LinkedIn community, Attorney Medical Record Resource Group, which is where we are getting all of our wonderful attorney guests. That's where they're all coming from. So I'm happy to have you here. And I just want to take the opportunity before we get to our special guest this week. I'm going to head over to the comment section and see if or who is here checking us out live, who's here, team live this week. And if you're on the replay, please, it's wonderful to have you. Thanks for checking us out. I'm just going to be looking for whoever, if someone could put an A in the chat, if you are one of the attendees that signed up to be a part of our event today. I believe I saw Liz Garcia signed up. If you're here, Liz, please put an A in that chat so we can take a look at you and say hello. Robert Beck, I believe you signed up. Put an A in that chat if you're here live or on the replay. Also, Lori Jubileer, she was our very first attorney guest way back when we started in March last month. And finally, Douglas Burrell, who is going to be our upcoming guest in May. Thank you all for signing up. If you are also a member, any members of our Attorney Medical Record Resource Group, put an A in that chat. If you are a part of women-owned law like me and Lori Jubileer, put a W in that chat. And welcome again. Thank you for coming to our show and taking some of your precious time out of your busy day to be here. Today, we're going to hopefully take advantage of this opportunity to listen, to learn, and lengthen our connections in this ever-growing virtual world of networking. So to that point, it's time to introduce our guest. Today, our guest is Taylor Poncz. And Taylor Poncz is a partner at the law firm Drew, Eckel, and Farnham. She is an experienced litigator focusing her practice over the last decade exclusively in the defense of workers' compensation claims for employers, insurers, and self-insurers throughout the state of Georgia. Taylor is also a mediator, helping injured workers and employer insurers resolve workers' compensation claims. Most recently, Taylor started a podcast called The Motherboard, where she and four other attorneys highlight and discuss the ups and downs of being a lawyer and a mom. And now let's see if we can bring her over here. Let's find you, Taylor. And there you are. Yay.
Hi, Lisa.
We did it.
Yay.
Thank you for coming. I'm so glad to have you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, as always, I do want to get to all that wonderful information you have about the workers' compensation cases that you manage and mediate. But first, if you could, we want to hear about We want you to dive into how you got where you are today.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that kind introduction, Lisa. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you having me. I think what you're doing is wonderful. So, as you said, my name is Taylor Poncz. I practice exclusively in the defense of workers' compensation claims in the state of Georgia. I have been doing that for almost a decade and a half, which is kind of blows my mind that it's been that long, but it has. So I represent employers, insurers, self-insurers throughout the state of Georgia defending workers' compensation claims. I am originally from North Carolina, moved down to Atlanta for law school, and I've been here ever since, started a family here. And I've actually been at the same firm, Drew Reckel and Farnham, my entire career. First job and only job I've ever had. I was a summer associate there back in, I believe it was the summer of 2006. Started full time after I graduated law school, and I've been there ever since. And became a partner a few years ago, and it's been a wild and crazy ride throughout those years. I've also become a mom, and I have 3 boys, 6 and under. And you and I have spoken about that. Being a mom to
I've
boys
got
is
4.
exactly, you've got me beat, but I am not trying to compete.
Well, I had 2 at once. So
And I did too. So we've got that going on. I've got twin boys who are 6, and then I have a 4-year-old as well. So let's just say that, mediating cases is pretty much what I do at home too.
I understand.
Yeah. So
Understood.
exactly. So I actually, I didn't go to law school saying I'm going to be a workers' comp attorney. I actually didn't even know what workers' comp was when I was in law school because I was, 20, 21 years old and had no experience in the workforce. It sort of fell into my lap because the firm where I practiced, Drew Reckel and Farnham, we have such a large workers' compensation practice. So it sort of just fell into my lap because that's what so many people there were doing. And you might find this interesting, but what I think drew me to it was the medical. I was very interested in reading medical records. I had always had an interest in medicine, but never felt like I was cut out for med school or to be a nurse, but I was always interested in it. So, workers' compensation sort of married those two interests of the law, but also the medical side of things. Um, and yeah, I really, I enjoy taking doctors' depositions. I enjoy going deep with the medical issues. And I like to self-diagnose around the house. And every time I do, my husband says, but you're not a doctor. Well, I feel like I sort of am because I read medical records all day and I, know more than the average person about medical issues. So I've really found my niche that it fits me well, suits me well because of my interest in medicine. And it's been a great practice. It's been a really great practice, a very flexible practice, and an interesting one where I've learned a lot. And then in the last 3 years, I've been mediating as well, which has been a really awesome boost to my defense practice because it allows me to see the other side and to sort of couple the defense oriented side of me with just the interest in the injured workers side. And I have found that I actually have quite a passion for mediation, and I've really enjoyed that side of it. So I really like how my practice has developed and sort of what it turned into, especially considering I didn't enter it knowing that this was the trajectory I was going to have. But I think because I've really stuck to what I enjoy and what I'm interested in, it's developed in a way that's made me really enjoy my practice.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you've been following your passion.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Mhm. And I understand that. I understand where legal and medical meet. It's an interesting place.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting.
It is. You know, uh, I was in the side where all of the things that you were trying to avoid. Those were the things I did every day. But it's nice to be on this side of things, and I think time and experience is helpful.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm glad we get to know you a little bit more, and say hi to those boys for
I
us.
will. You might
Now,
hear them.
oh, you hear them? Are they here yet?
No, you might hear them. No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
And that's fine. Let me just tell you. Uh, so on to how do you decide, or how do you get the cases that you work on? Are you picking and choosing, or are they thrust upon you?
Um, the latter. No, I mean, it would be nice to pick and choose, but I just think as a defense attorney, naturally, they sort of land on your desk, and you have to just adapt, and you never know what you're going to get. And I think it keeps it exciting. Yeah, I mean, I am hired by insurance companies, or sometimes employers, self-insurers, who hire me directly or request me to be their counsel. And so I am presented with whatever injury happens to have occurred. Sometimes it's run of the mill back injuries. I mean, I've done the lumbar spine, a thousand different cases on the lumbar spine. And sometimes it's something that's really interesting. I actually recently had a few claims related to cancer diagnoses. And, obviously now we're seeing COVID cases. So, everything from a shoulder to a back to a knee is very common, or, carpal tunnel, things like that tend to be more common, especially because a lot of these claimants might be in jobs that require more manual labor, like construction, so it's common to see things like back injuries from lifting or slip and falls. Torn meniscus, carpal tunnel, torn shoulder. See a lot of rotator cuff tears, but a lot of them are common injuries. So I'm used to seeing them, but every once in a while you get something that you haven't seen before. But it's really interesting. So, right off the bat, I'm looking at the medical records. I'm looking to see who the authorized treating physician is and what their opinions are regarding not only just diagnosis, but also causation. Pre-existing medical conditions is very relevant to workers' comp. Whether they have subsequent injuries or super added injuries, if something new develops that's not the same as an initial symptom or initial diagnosis. So we're constantly looking at causation, constantly looking at diagnosis, prognosis, and what future medical needs are. So that's how I'm approaching a case. But whether or not, I can't say that I necessarily pick and choose. I'm happy to take on whatever case comes my way. But yeah, you really do see different cases all the time.
And yes, when those medical records rear their ugly heads, as oftentimes it does when you have workers' comp.
Yep.
Is there a specific protocol you use? I know you have some legal nurse consultants at Drew, Eckle, and Farnham, but is there any consistent procedure that you embrace when those records thump themselves on your desk?
So that's a great question. In workers' compensation, most often we're using paralegals to assist us with medical summaries. I am always also reviewing all medical in very much detail, because it really helps me understand a case. I have had many cases over the last decade that have turned on very, very, very detail, a very small detail in the medical record. So I heavily rely on a paralegal summary, but I am still putting my eyes on every single medical record that is involved in my cases. I do have some insurance company clients who use nurse case managers to help look at the medical, assess causation. Sometimes it depends on the complexity of the injury and how serious it is, or how much involvement is needed in coordinating and facilitating medical treatment. So it's really case by case that determines whether I need someone beyond my paralegal to assist with the medical management. And then, whether if it's a catastrophic claim, we have a rehab supplier that assists with that. But I really think that the buck stops with the attorney's review of the medical in conjunction with a nurse case manager or a paralegal. I have just seen so often that the way medical records are written and comments in medical records can really be a deciding factor in a case. And what's interesting is that doctors are not lawyers, just like lawyers are not doctors. So the way that a doctor might word something in a medical record might mean one thing to him or her, but it could have a whole different legal implication based on the workers' compensation case. And there are a lot of doctors in our industry who are well versed in workers' comp lingo, but sometimes it gets written a certain way, or maybe it's from a hospital who doesn't have the same workers' comp training that maybe a normal orthopedist who does workers' comp law. Maybe you have a hospitalist who writes something in the medical records. It has a pretty big implication in the workers' comp context, whether it could be a huge implication for the duration of benefits, whether someone on the issue of causation that we discussed earlier, or simply about disability. So it could make the difference of whether a claimant is entitled to weekly benefits and should remain out of work, or whether they should be back at work. So, for example, oftentimes I see doctors might say that the injured worker can return to work, but it's not clear if they mean return to work in the, at full duty with no work restrictions, which has a very significant legal implication, versus they can return to work with restrictions, for example. So that's the difference could potentially be the difference of thousands and thousands of dollars on a case. So I've really found it interesting, and I feel like it demands very detailed analysis of the medical records, because of the fact that doctors sometimes word things in ways that might be very significant to them, but might have legal ramifications that perhaps they don't even intend. So oftentimes part of my job is seeking clarification from the doctor. For example, I recently had a case where the doctor indicated that the injured worker had been placed at MMI, return to work, which my client read to say that means return to work to the prior job, full duty, and suspended benefits. Well, obviously the claimant's attorney challenged that and disagreed with it and said, that's not what he said. And so ultimately we had to seek clarification from what we call the ATP, the authorized treating physician. We needed to seek clarification, because that was the difference between whether an injured worker got his weekly checks or didn't get his weekly checks. So that's why it's really important to have almost multiple levels of analysis on what those medical records say.
Okay, and I can understand your point. Definitely, sometimes physicians, what they're saying is not what we're understanding. So it's good to get clarification.
Yes.
So, is there anything else that you find really?
Oh, 1 second. Sorry.
Hi, welcome. Welcome.
Told you it could potentially happen.
Well, that's real life.
No, we're all good. We're all good. Sorry. Go ahead with your question.
No problem. You mentioned some of the things you find difficult with dealing with some of those records, with physicians clarifying what they're saying. Is there anything else that you find really perplexing or annoying and hard to deal with when?
Oh, well, how much time do you have?
Records?
One of the things that I have seen happen a lot in workers' compensation, and I think that this happens in a lot of different litigation that involves medical records, so including personal injury type cases, is that there is a very clear claimant's attorney doctors and defense attorney doctors. And to a certain extent, sometimes it feels like a game, like you have to play the game. And that can be really frustrating, because at the end of the day, I want the truth. I want a reliable doctor. And I think that oftentimes it's like if you don't play the game, so to speak, you don't want to not get the best outcome from your client, but that becomes frustrating when, participating in that and, hiring similar doctors often is frustrating, because it either drives up the value of a case when it shouldn't, or drives down the value of a case when it shouldn't. But I think that happens because, you know, money talks, and claimants attorneys want to get the most money from their cases. So if they hire liberal physicians, it tends to drive up the value of their cases. I also think sometimes that they are limited by who will treat on a lien. So when you have a controverted case, that sometimes that's who they have to go to. But at the end of the day, that's just not my style. What I really like to see is a reliable physician. It is much easier for me to evaluate a case properly and in good faith to my client when I have a physician whose opinion I can rely on. So if I get a claimant's doctor that, you know, has the same report every time, my client's not going to put as much stock in it. And that is frustrating. Whereas I would much rather get a middle of the road physician who's going to give me a reliable, reasonable opinion that I could say to my client, this is a reliable doctor. We should trust what this doctor has to say regarding causation or the length of disability or the type of treatment that's recommended. And so, you know, it's not to say that you don't see it on the defense side, because you do. There are more defense-oriented doctors. But, you know, my experience is they tend to analyze it in a different way than the doctors that, you know, predominantly work for the claimant side. So that can be frustrating. And I think any attorney who deals with these issues would say the same, that they sort of participate in it, but at the same time, they wish everyone would just say, let's get a fresh set of doctors. Let's use people who are more middle of the road, because we get more reliable opinions that way. So that's something that I think has frustrated me with the system, but you know, that's on a very large level. That is very hard to make changes on a micro level, but it's something that I've seen and I've witnessed over the last, you know, decade and a half, that I would say bothers me about the system. But again, sort of inherent.
Well, it sounds like to me you're wary of a doctor that's a hammer in search of a nail.
Right.
You know, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
That's right.
So
that's right. If you look hard enough, you'll find something.
Well, I'm glad you are wary of those types of individuals, and it's important, you know, to try and get everybody on the same page and get to the truth of the matter, and that's what records do. They tell the truth.
Yep.
You just have to find the right person. Look at them. So,
that's right.
All right. Well, finally, let's just ask you if you have any other. You've given so much good advice so far.
I hope so.
Any last pieces of advice that you might give a new fledgling attorney that is workers' comp, or even a veteran attorney that's been doing it a long time? Any new light you can shed?
Well, I don't know if this is a new idea, but off the cuff, my number one advice is, and always will be, your reputation precedes you. And at least with workers' comp, we have a very small bar. And if you do it long enough, you will know pretty much everyone in the practice, or you will have heard of them or heard something about them. And so focus first on your reputation and doing the right thing and being fair and reasonable. I try to approach every case with extreme advocacy for my client, but treating people like they're people. And, you know, I always say, how would I want one of my family members treated? Now, a liar's a liar, but so putting those situations aside, because of course we do see them. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. And I think it's super important to treat one another with respect. And I really try to approach each case that way. Again, it doesn't mean that I'm not a strong advocate for my client, because I am, but I think you can still do that in a classy, honest way. And I've just seen the effort and intention I've put into making sure that my reputation is a good one. I've seen it really benefit me over the course of my career. So it's very important. And, you know, if you ruin your reputation, it's very difficult to repair, especially when you practice in a small bar like the workers' compensation bar. So that would be my absolute number one recommendation for any new attorney.
It sounds like good advice. Like my mother
For
used,
anybody.
yes, that's true. My mother used to say it's easier to remember the truth than it is the lie. So
That's correct.
that's a good way to live. And I am so glad that you have been here, Taylor. You possess a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm so glad you're here sharing it with us.
Well, you are so lovely. You reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I very much appreciate it. You're just very genuine and authentic, and just kind of a breath of fresh air. So I have really enjoyed getting to know you, and yeah, I thank you for including me.
You're as sweet as pie. You are. Well, I also want to make sure if anybody is out there visiting us live or even on the replay, if you have any questions and answers, it's going to be some questions and answers for Taylor in a minute. Get yourselves together, get your thoughts together, and get ready to funnel those questions or comments into the comment box. And before we get to the Q&A time for Taylor, we take a little tiny sponsor break. We do it every week. And when Taylor has been managing those workers' comp cases, where large amounts of medical documentation, it comes from the hospital, doctors, physical therapists, when all that arises, it might be beneficial to have a consistent kind of protocol like Taylor does to address and manage all of those records. And here at Wade Nurse Consultants, we have a little free guide that we have to help you create or revamp your current procedures around medical records that come with those medically related and workers' comp cases. 5 attorney tips to substantive medical record reviews. We're going to put the link for that giveaway in the comment box. We may make it there. If not, you'll find that link inside the description of this YouTube channel. Feel free to click in there and then download our free guide. And now we're done with that. Back to questions. Oh, it did make it there. That's good. It made it there. Feel free to click on that free guide and use it to your advantage to help, like I said, set up a regular system to manage medical record reviews. Important if you're a solo practitioner, not as many helpers as Taylor may have to manage things. And now on to Taylor's questions and answers, Q&A. Let's see, do we have any questions at the moment? Please get them together.
Did I just answer everything?
Well, I think you did. That may be why you have stunned everyone into silence now. They are just well informed. So if that's the case and somebody thinks of something a little later, feel free to visit and put that in the comments, and I will funnel any questions to Taylor. And
yes, or feel free to reach out to me by email. Perfect. My email is on my website at Drew Eckel and Farnham. Yeah. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Taylor Poncz. So yeah, I'd be happy to.
I did. I put your email, if that's all right, in the description box. Perfect. Inside this YouTube channel. So feel free to dive in there, find out where Taylor is, ask her bunches of questions, and I think we may be winding down for this week.
Thank you again so much for having me, Lisa.
Oh, it was wonderful to have you here today. And let me see. I think I have. Oh, I just want to remind everybody about the motherboard.
Yes.
I'll put that connection also so you can listen to that podcast.
Yes, the Motherboard is an awesome new podcast we have. We talk about issues related to lawyering and mothering and issues beyond that. So I hope everybody listens in. It is wonderful. And you can get access to the motherboard anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify. We'd appreciate the support.
Perfect. And I'll put that connection inside the description box in this YouTube channel, so you can reach her there too. Uh, so as I said, I think we're gonna be winding down. Let me just say, throw some things in there. Remind you to visit our LinkedIn group, Attorney Medical Record Resource Group. That connection, that link will be in the description box if it doesn't make it to our comments. Maybe later. And just take a look, see if it's a good fit. We talk about medical records every week, and you can ask questions every week. Next, oh, it made it at the link to the group. Wonderful. And also, like us on our channel, comment, even on the replay, and subscribe to our channel so you can get and turn on your notifications so you can catch us each week. You can email me, Lisa at wadenurseconsultants.com, if you have any questions about the show or questions about being a guest. But watch next week when our guest is Stephen Tannenbaum Esquire from New York, a very unique individual with some unique experiences. So I encourage you to catch up with us on next Monday, 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and join us for another episode of Should You Take That Case? Thank you, Taylor.
Bye.
Bye.